Shana Tova, Happy New Year. I hope you all had a spiritual and uplifting Rosh Hashanah experience. I'm delighted to share with you the same words that I shared in Alam Hall on day one and in the Yavne on day two. And like I started off there, I would like to start off here with a vote of thanks. Because Rosh Hashanah never happens in a vacuum. Every year, a group of volunteers spend hundreds of hours planning Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot to enable us to celebrate together. This year, that same group of uber-dedicated volunteers spent literally thousands of hours planning, having to shift the plans as the government changed the guidelines, planning again, whipping them up, planning again. I was involved in 10% of the meetings, and I spent hours on it. I shudder to think how much time the honorary officers have spent planning and keep our community together. And it's not just for Rosh Hashanah. Ever since coronavirus hit, they have spent literally hundreds, thousands of hours dedicated to our community, ensuring that there is a care provision, rebuilding the community online. And without them, who knows what would have happened? Who knows what our community experience would be? And it's important to remember that these are volunteers, people who have real lives, real jobs, and are therefore spending their precious spare hours for the greater good. And so on behalf of everybody, I would like to wish the honorary officers a huge, huge thank you and a virtual round of applause. I would also like to share a prayer, and that this be a Shana Tova to Cumbria, a sweet, happy, but most importantly, a healthy year for each and every one of us. For those who are unwell, I wish you a speedy recovery. And may the Almighty enable the scientists to come up with a virus quickly but safely to enable us to move on past the current pandemic. On January 25th, 1974, the young jazz musician Keith Jarrett was invited to give a concert in the Cologne Opera House. By then, he'd already built a cult following, so this was his mini European tour. So the night before, he had given a concert in Zurich, and therefore arrived at the venue some point in the afternoon to find that instead of the imperial grand piano that he required to be able to produce the concert, there was instead a baby grand piano. And what was worse is that the actual piano was faulty. The high notes couldn't really reach the points that they needed to. The low notes were too low. The pedals stuck, and some of the keys just simply didn't work. He considered giving up, going home, but when he heard that over 1,000 people had booked to hear him play at 11:30 at night, he decided that the show must go on. The story continues, although I believe this bit might be a bit apocryphal, that he hadn't eaten any food that day, so he went out to a local restaurant. But by the time the waiters brought him his food, he had to leave. Again, he considered giving up, but it was the thought of 1,000 people booking to hear him play that made him continue. And thank God that he did, because that concert has turned out to be one of the most important in musical history. Over 3.5 million copies of the recording have been sold. To this day, it is the best-selling solo jazz album of all time. It is the best-selling piano album of all time. It is widely considered one of the albums that somebody needs to listen to before they die. It is widely considered to be a masterpiece. Why? What did he do which was so amazing? Simple. He decided to ignore all of the keys that he couldn't play, ignore the pedals, and instead focus his entire musical imagination, creativity on that small section in the middle of a piano that was good enough to be played that night. And by ruminating and reflecting and riffing and being creative with those small sets of keys, he created something amazing, something magical. I think for many of us this year, the High Holy Days feels like we've come to a concert hall and the piano in front of us is missing the most important keys: friends, family, community, singing, being together. But we've got a choice. Do we focus on those aspects that are outside of our control, the aspects that we don't have access to? Or do we instead focus on the keys that we can play? Because when we focus on that which is within our control, we can create something amazing. We can do something magical. And so my blessing, my gift, my sermon to you is that we should all be able to focus and play the keys that we are given. And together we can create something amazing. I wish you all a Shana Tova.